Greetings and welcome to a special episode of Morrowind Modding Interviews. Today we're doing a follow-up interview with Zini, the project lead behind OpenMorrowind. Thanks for agreeing to do another interview with us.
You're very welcome.
So it's been about a year since you last did an interview with us. What's changed with OpenMorrowind in that time frame?
Yeah, a bit over a year. A lot, really. We had 5 feature releases, 2 maintenance releases. We changed our rendering engine. People who were working on the project changed a bit. We lost our release video maker guy. Tried to get another one that somehow never got really started. And then we found another one, and now we have release videos again.
Oh yeah, I suppose I am partially to blame for the lack of release videos so late. As I understand it though, the new guy is taking over for Weird Sexy for the meantime anyway.
That's correct.
Alright, sort of moving on, with the release of OpenMorrowind 3.8 the past few months, and the upcoming OpenMorrowind 3.9 release, what's the biggest focus of the project right now? As I understand it, pretty much all major features of Morrowind itself are already in OpenMorrowind, so is the focus now mostly on bug fixing and optimization?
Optimization is not really a focus anymore. We've done the main steps for now. There might be something coming in direction, or maybe not, but it's definitely not required. Right now, all major features are complete. We are still missing a few bits here and there, mostly in the area of AI. But yeah, so right now it's mostly plug in the last remaining holes, bug fixing, polishing, basically.
Alright, so that pretty much just leads into my next question. At this point, when can we expect OpenMorrowind 1.0 to be released? Is it sometime this year, perhaps?
That is a very difficult question. 2 reasons. First, I'm really bad at predicting release dates. Especially with these volunteer-based projects, where you never know how many people you have in the next week working on stuff. Then there's the second point. OpenMorrowind and our editor have been so far released in sync. So if we released OpenMorrowind 0.38, then we also released the CS 0.38. I would really prefer to keep it that way. There are many reasons for that. For example, generally these together released programs should be used together. So if I use the editor with a different version of OpenMorrowind, that can cause problems. And if we get the version numbers out of sync there, that would be really confusing. There's also the issue that we would have to rewrite basically part of our build system to release them out of sync. And that's really the point now. OpenMW is very close to release. We could jump to 1.0 in the near future. The editor, not quite there. So we haven't really decided yet what we do about that. If we reach a point where OpenMorrowind is nearly finished or finished, and the editor is close behind, then we will maybe wait a bit. If the editor is still far behind, then we will go ahead and release OpenMorrowind 1.0 alone anyway. So many uncertainties here. This year, yeah, I would say the chance is over 50%.
Well, that sounds pretty good, and, speaking of the OpenCS, back when we last talked, the OpenCS was still pretty much in early state, and definitely seemed to be lagging behind the development of OpenMorrowind itself. Has there been any new progress on the open construction set, and can modders expect to find some new features in there for making OpenMorrowind mods? And I also understand that, back when we last talked, that OpenMorrowind mods weren't, you couldn't actually save your progress, I don't think, and, is it possible now to actually create new OpenMorrowind mods and actually have them loaded into the game?
Yeah, well, the editor is still far behind OpenMorrowind, but we definitely made progress. So there are basically 2 halves. First the 3D scene, editing, and then everything else. Everything else we are more or less finished. There are still a few features missing that need to be done so that the editor can be used efficiently, but nothing essential is missing there anymore. Well, merge tool kinda. I wrote a merge tool that is sufficient for redemption. After thinking about it again, it seems it's not sufficient for TR. So I will have to do another pass there. But yes, in general, you can save user-created content file with our editor and then actually play it. That's possible. The other point as mentioned, is the 3D scene. That was kinda hit hard by the change of the rendering engine. We haven't 100% recovered from that yet. But we are also making progress on that now, and we should expect something soon there.
Oh yes, and speaking of the new rendering engine, OpenMW switched to rendering engines, I think it was like 5 or 6 months ago or something like that. And OpenSceneGraph, how has that transition been going for OpenMW? Has it made for better performance with the project, and has it made it easier to finish what's left to do?
The performance increased hugely. Varies obviously between, depending on the machine in use. The numbers we are getting here is something double frame rate to quadruple frame rate. We basically consider the frame rate now sufficient for a game to be playable. The transition itself, well, was a huge amount of work. And it is designed that it's relatively easy to replace third-party libraries. But still, it was a huge task. Scroll did almost all of it on its own. As mentioned, the editor was kinda hit hard. Scroll seems to be overall pretty happy with the change of the engine. I must say I find OpenSceneGraph a bit harder to use than Ogre.
So, does that mean that there might be like a delay in terms of adding new features to OpenMW, after the 1.0 release?
You mean from the OpenSceneGraph change? No. That will not affect progress after 1.0.
Okay, good to know. I was just sort of curious about that. And, OpenMW has actually been in the news a lot recently thanks to a side project showcasing OpenMW's potential for multiplayer. I know multiplayer isn't exactly one of OpenMW's goals at this point, but do you think multiplayer may well get implemented into OpenMW at some point in the future?
We never said that we would reject multiplayer in general. It's really more a question of when. For 1.0, it's, as said many times, out of question. For the immediate future after 1.0, probably not either. Would interfere pretty hefty with a lot of our tasks we'll be working on. The great hard coding mostly, but yeah, in general, we have no problem with multiplayer. And I actually expect that we will have it one day.
So, we discussed this a bit before in our last interview, but right now, with the current progress of OpenMW and the new rendering engine, what is the number one new feature you're most looking forward to adding into OpenMW post 1.0?
That's another difficult question. There's, of course, world spaces. That will be really, really interesting. But then there's also basic hard coding. We're moving away from fixed skills, from fixed attributes, from fixed weapon types, fixed spell schools, and so on. That's not necessarily as substantial as the world spaces, but I suspect that this will be really, really fun. And with that, I mean really fun to implement.
Oh yes, and I'm sure it'll also be really fun for the modders to finally get to design their own world spaces and not have to have all these landmass conflicts and things like that.
Well, I hope so.
Now, this is a bit off topic, but there's been quite a few updates regarding the Ultima 9 Redemption project of late, and I was curious, are you still following that project? And do you know what progress is currently being made on it?
I'm still part of the project. Right now I don't spend too much attention on it, Just too many things going on at the same time. Can't really afford it. But yeah, some progress is made, but it's still held back by the lack of Open Morrowind and also the editor.
Now, I did hear from one of the Ultima news sites that there might be plans to release a demo for Ultima 9 Redemption in its current form. Do you know if that's something that might actually happen?
That is possible, yes, could happen.
Alright, that'll definitely be interesting to see. And going on to this next question, the biggest graphics mod in the Morrowind modding community right now is, probably the Morrowind Graphics Extended, which is still getting some regular updates with new graphical features. And right now it has an absolute ton of graphical options and updates for Morrowind, and I'm kind of curious, will Open Morrowind eventually add in a lot of these features, like per pixel lighting, dynamic wave ripples, and depth shaders that are currently available in Morrowind Graphics Extended? And if so, will most of these be implemented in a post 1.0 Open Morrowind release?
The question here is more or less not if, but when. Well, can't guarantee that we will really implement all features, but we eventually should get most of them. For the timeline, can't really say for sure. In general, we don't plan anything before 1.0. But Scroll maybe push something in anyway. Could happen.
Oh yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see, and I'm especially looking forward to seeing Morrowind with the performance of Open Morrowind, but also with the sort of graphical upgrades of Morrowind Graphics Extended. And I think a lot of people are kind of looking forward to that sort of thing.
Well, we have some stuff already. Of course, we already have the better water. The object shaders just made it back in. So we are not that far off.
Well, that's definitely good to hear. And going into this next question, I was just sort of curious, do you have any other comments about what's going on with the Open Morrowind development cycle that you'd like to talk about?
I guess I could announce the next release. We don't really have a date for it yet. We're more or less at a point where we could go ahead with the release phase, but there's still one feature I really want to get in, and it got delayed a couple of times. Big thing for upcoming release is the streaming cell loading. That means going from cell to cell without breaks for loading. I think that will be really popular.
Oh, good heavens, yes. I mean, that is probably one of the most annoying things with Morrowind currently. I mean, especially for video recording, you get all this lag when you change cells, and I'm really looking forward to that, I have to say.
Yeah, I guess many people will.
Anyway, I guess that wraps up all the questions I have for you, so thanks again for agreeing to do this interview.
It was fun.
And hopefully we'll see a Open Morrowind 1.0 release at some point in this year. Or possibly early next year, if it gets delayed.
Something like that, yeah. Pretty sure of it.